What if I told you that everything you've been taught about manifestation is built on a fundamental misunderstanding? That the vision boards, the endless affirmations, the constant visualizations you've been practicing are actually keeping you from experiencing the miraculous life you desire? My dear friend, I welcome you to this sacred conversation today. I'm about to reveal the actual teachings of Neville Goddard, one of the most profound spiritual teachers of the 20th century, whose message has been distorted, diluted, and completely misrepresented by so many so-called manifestation experts today. After dedicating over 15 years to studying Goddard's complete works, every lecture, every book, every recording, I discovered something that shook me to my core. The manifestation techniques being taught everywhere today are missing the crucial elements that make Goddard's teachings so transformative. What you're about to learn isn't just another technique. It's the fundamental truth about the nature of reality itself. A truth so powerful that when properly understood and applied, it can literally transform your life overnight. Neville Goddard wasn't just another spiritual teacher. Born in Barbados in 1905, he arrived in America as a young man and eventually became one of the most revolutionary mystics of his time. His teachings went far beyond the surface-level think positive thoughts approach that floods your social media feeds today. Instead, Goddard revealed something far more profound, the secret of consciousness itself. And through his own extraordinary experiences, he proved his teachings worked with consistent, sometimes instantaneous results. But here's what's troubling. Despite his crystal-clear instructions, today's manifestation industry has twisted his message beyond recognition. I've watched countless videos, read hundreds of modern books claiming to teach Goddard's methods, and frankly, I'm astonished at how they've missed his core message. Today, I'm setting the record straight. I'm going to reveal 3 shocking misconceptions about manifestation that keep people trapped in cycles of hoping, wishing, and ultimately being disappointed when their desires fail to materialize. These aren't small misunderstandings, they're fundamental errors that completely undermine your manifestation practice before you even begin. And once you understand what Goddard was actually teaching, you'll never approach manifestation the same way again. The first shocking truth about manifestation is something so contrary to what you've been taught that it might initially seem impossible. Yet once you grasp it, everything changes. But before I reveal that, let me be clear about something. This isn't about adding another technique to your spiritual toolbox. This is about completely revolutionizing how you understand your relationship with reality itself. You see, what Goddard discovered wasn't just a method for getting things. It was a recognition of who you truly are, and the incredible power that recognition unleashes. In his own words, which you'll rarely hear quoted in today's manifestation circles, Goddard stated, "The whole vast world is yourself pushed out." This isn't a metaphor or a nice spiritual saying. It's the literal truth about the nature of existence that quantum physics is only now beginning to validate. What does this mean for you? It means that the reason most manifestation techniques fail isn't because you're doing them incorrectly. It's because you're operating from a fundamentally flawed understanding of what manifestation actually is. Throughout this video, I'll be sharing direct quotes from Goddard's original lectures and books, many of which have been conveniently overlooked by today's teachers because they contradict the complicated systems they profit from teaching. I'll also share stories from my own life and the lives of my students who have applied these authentic teachings and experienced results that can only be described as miraculous, from instant healings to seemingly impossible life circumstances resolving overnight. The path Goddard laid out is simpler than you've been led to believe, yet paradoxically more profound. It doesn't require years of practice, spiritual advancement, or maintaining constant high vibrations. In fact, it works regardless of your mood, circumstances, or spiritual background. What it does require is understanding a fundamental truth about consciousness that, once realized, changes everything. And this truth is what I'll be revealing today, starting with the first major misconception that's been keeping your manifestations from materializing. The first shocking truth about manifestation is that you're not attracting anything from outside yourself. The entire concept of attraction that dominates today's manifestation teachings fundamentally contradicts what Neville Goddard actually taught. Goddard was crystal clear. The world is yourself pushed out. This isn't a poetic metaphor. It's the central pillar of his teaching. There is No external world separate from your consciousness that you need to somehow influence or attract things from. In his lecture, The Secret of Imagining, Goddard stated, "The world which we perceive is a revelation of the mind with which we observe it. This means the very people, circumstances, and conditions you're trying to attract are actually projections of your own consciousness." Consider this quote from his book, The Power of Awareness. "You do not attract that which you want, but that which you are." This completely reverses the model most manifestation teachers promote today. Let me share a story from one of Goddard's lectures that perfectly illustrates this principle. A woman attended his lectures who desperately wanted to own her own home but lacked the financial means. Rather than teaching her to attract a house through constant affirmations or vision boards, Goddard instructed her to simply sleep each night in the consciousness of already being a homeowner. She didn't repeatedly visualize owning a home. Instead, she assumed the feeling of already being in her home as she fell asleep. Within weeks, through a series of events that seemed like mere coincidences, she was offered a home under terms she could easily afford. The house didn't come to her. Her consciousness transformed and expressed itself as her new reality. This brings us to the second major misconception: the belief that you need to keep affirming and visualizing repeatedly to manifest your desires. Today's manifestation industry thrives on techniques that keep you busy, constantly affirming, visualizing, scripting, and engaging in complex rituals, yet Goddard's actual teaching was radically different and far simpler. In his book, Feeling is the Secret, he writes, "It is not what you do once in a while that shapes your life, but what you do consistently." But here's the crucial point almost everyone misses. The consistency he's referring to isn't about repeated visualization. It's about consistently living from the assumption that your desire is already fulfilled. Goddard called this living from the end. Rather than repeatedly visualizing to make something happen in the future, you simply assume the consciousness of already having your desire fulfilled, and then live from that state. Let me share my own experience with this principle. Years ago, I desperately wanted to move to a specific neighborhood that was well beyond my financial means. After understanding Goddard's actual teaching, rather than repeatedly visualizing myself living there someday, I simply assumed the feeling of already living there. When friends asked where I lived, in my mind I answered from my desired state, feeling the naturalness of living in that neighborhood. I didn't engage in hours of visualization or affirmations. I simply lived from the assumption it was already done. Within 3 months, through a series of unexpected circumstances, I was living in that exact neighborhood, in an apartment I could afford. The third and perhaps most pervasive misconception about manifestation is that it requires positive thinking and maintaining high vibrations. This particular distortion of Goddard's teaching has caused immense harm, creating a kind of spiritual bypassing where people feel they must suppress negative emotions to manifest effectively. What Goddard actually taught was something far more liberating: the law of assumption, not the law of attraction. He stated clearly, it is not what you want that you attract what you believe to be true. This means your conscious positivity is largely irrelevant if your deeper assumptions contradict it. You don't need to force yourself into constant positivity. You simply need to assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, regardless of external circumstances. Goddard's technique of revision perfectly illustrates this distinction. Rather than forcing positive thinking about an unpleasant event, revision involves reimagining the event as you wish it had happened, knowing that past, present, and future exist simultaneously in consciousness. In his lecture, Pruning Shears of Revision, Goddard shares the story of a woman whose relationship with her son-in-law was strained to the breaking point. Rather than using affirmations about their relationship improving in the future, she used revision to reimagine their past interactions in a loving way. She didn't deny the negative experience, she revised it in her imagination. Within weeks, without any external action on her part, her son-in-law's attitude completely transformed. Their relationship healed not because she maintained high vibrations, but because she changed her assumption about the relationship itself. What made Goddard's teaching so revolutionary is that it doesn't require you to control your thoughts or maintain consistent positive emotions. It simply requires assuming the feeling of your wish fulfilled, especially in the drowsy state before sleep, when your conscious mind's resistance is lowest. In his own words, you must assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled until your assumption has all the sensory vividness of reality. You must imagine that you are already experiencing what you desire. That is, you must assume the feeling of the fulfillment of your desire until you are possessed by it, and this feeling crowds all other ideas out of your consciousness. Now that you understand the 3 fundamental misconceptions about Neville Goddard's teachings, let's integrate this knowledge into a simple, powerful practice that you can begin tonight before sleep. The exact time Goddard identified as most potent for transformation. Remember what we've learned. First, you're not attracting anything from outside yourself. The world is your consciousness externalized. Second, manifestation isn't about repetitive techniques, but about living from the end, assuming the consciousness of already having what you desired. And third, this isn't about forcing positive thoughts, but about assumption, regardless of your current circumstances. Here's the practice Goddard himself described as the most powerful application of his teaching, what he called the law of identical harvest. It's deceptively simple, yet when applied consistently, it will revolutionize your life. As you lie in bed tonight, just before sleep, bring your body to complete relaxation. Take several deep breaths, feeling tension dissolve with each exhale. As your body relaxes, your mind becomes more receptive, entering what Goddard called the drowsy state, the perfect condition for impressing your subconscious mind. Now, instead of visualizing your desire as something to be attained in the future, I want you to do something simple. Feel yourself into the state of already having fulfilled your desire. How would you feel falling asleep tonight if your wish were already realized? Would there be a profound sense of gratitude, a quiet contentment, a deep relief? Whatever that feeling is, immerse yourself in it completely. Don't just think about it, become it. Goddard writes, the feeling of the wish fulfilled, if assumed and maintained, must objectify the state that would have created it. This is the secret most teachers miss. It's not about the mental picture, but about the feeling of naturalness that accompanies your fulfilled desire. As you drift towards sleep, maintain this feeling. Don't strain or force it. Simply rest in the absolute assumption that what you desire is already yours. Neville teaches that sleep serves as a portal where your assumed state is impressed upon your subconscious, which then begins reshaping your external reality to match it. Now, you might be wondering, but what if my desire feels impossible? How can I possibly feel it's already mine when my current reality shows no evidence of it? This is precisely where Goddard's teaching diverges from conventional wisdom. He would say that your current reality is merely the harvest of past assumptions. Your new assumption, if maintained, must produce its corresponding reality, its law. In his lecture, Assumptions Harden into Fact, Goddard states, if you persist in assuming your wish is fulfilled, it must be externalized. The time it takes your assumption to become fact depends upon the naturalness of your feeling of already being what you want to be, of already having what you desire. The beauty of this practice is its simplicity. You don't need special tools, extensive knowledge, or years of spiritual training. You simply need to understand and apply this fundamental truth about consciousness. What you assume to be true, with feeling, must objectify itself. Some of you might be questioning, but what about action? Don't I need to do something to make my desires manifest? This is another common misunderstanding that Goddard addressed directly. Inspired action naturally flows from your assumed state. You don't force it. When you truly live from the end, you'll find yourself naturally taking actions consistent with your desire fulfilled, often without conscious planning. The right doors open, the right opportunities present themselves, and the right people appear in your life, not because you're attracting them, but because your consciousness is reshaping your experience to match your assumption. I want to emphasize something crucial. This is not a technique to be tried once or twice. This is a fundamental shift in how you relate to reality itself. Goddard was clear. The whole vast world is yourself pushed out. When you truly grasp this, manifestation ceases to be something you do and becomes what you are. Now that you know what Neville Goddard really taught, you can stop wasting time on complicated techniques that don't work and start experiencing the results you've been seeking. Tonight, as you lie in bed, remember, assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, fall asleep in that assumption, and watch as your external world reshapes itself to match your new state of consciousness. If you found this revelation about Goddard's true teachings valuable, make sure you subscribe for more videos unveiling the misunderstood teachings of manifestation masters. I'll be sharing the specific applications of these principles for health, wealth, relationships, and spiritual awakening in upcoming videos. Remember, in Neville's own words, you are already that which you want to be, and your refusal to believe this is the only reason you do not see it. Tonight, as you drift to sleep, know the truth of who you really are, the operant power of your world, and watch as miracles unfold naturally in your life.